At its September 16th, 2020 meeting, the CIAC Board of Control reaffirmed its September 3rd decision to cancel full contact football for the 2020-2021 school year. This decision was made in alignment with the Connecticut Department of Health's recommendation that football is a high-risk sport and should not be played this fall. The board, however, did agree that it would consider allowing competition at a later time for a sport that cannot hold its regularly scheduled season, such as football, provided it does not negatively impact spring sports. In its response to CIAC, DPH continued to recommend substituting higher risk athletic activities with moderate risk or lower risk options and or postponing those activities to a later time. In alignment with those recommendations, by the end of this week, through our football committee, the CIAC will recommend low and moderate risk football activities in which schools may continue to engage their football athletes if they choose.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Meat Grinder, your weekly dose of high school football in Connecticut. And at the top of the show, you heard the bad news coming out of CIAC. Glenn Lungarini on a Zoom press conference, basically saying that the season is officially over and they're going to do everything they can as possible to have some sort of activities for the fall. But of all the sports that's being played, we are not going to play a traditional high school football season here in Connecticut. And just the crushing news, it happened right after we had put our first podcast of the season up, our now new Zoom podcast here of Game Time CT's Meat Grinder, and by the time we got it out, the season was over. So that was the quickest season in Meat Grinder Game Time CT podcast history. Joining me, of course, as always, is Pete Bagwaga. Peter, how are you?
Good. Unfortunately, the news did come down. I think it's news that a lot of us saw coming, but still, nothing can prepare you for the final, nail in the coffin. The hammer's coming down, like the season's not happening, and it sucks. There was like a little glimmer of hope after the rally where governor got involved and had the CIAC, brought the CIAC and the DPH back to the table. It seemed like the CIAC really put in a valiant fight, but the DPH wasn't budging, and they're the Department of Public Health for a reason. I'm not going to sit here and talk numbers and science because I don't know it. It's not our jobs. It's like what a lot of coaches say. Like, we're not doctors. So, you put your faith in something like the Department of Public Health, that they have they have in mind what's best for public health. And not playing football is what's in the best interest for public health in this state. It does stink. And, we were talking this weekend, like we'd probably be at a game. We'd probably be doing something, at a game Thursday, Friday, an early game Saturday. And then, we always have
going into week 3, right? Or we would have played 2 weeks already, right?
I think, we'd be going into week 3. And, it's kind of sucks. Like those, Sean and I on our way home from our games on Friday nights will sit on the phone for like an hour when we're driving home to talk about like what happened. And then we work on our videos and we put together the website. And then at like 2:30 in the morning, we're back on the phone just trying to recap. What'd you see? What did I see? I go, Sean and I both go on like the Hartford Courant. We go on the New London Day. We go on the Record Journal. We go on the Bristol Press. And we just read everything that went on in the state. And we don't get to do that this fall.
No, it was really weird. I was up in Boston this weekend, and usually I usually love to go to Boston this time of year when it's, when it's the leaves starting to change or the weather's getting a little colder. No leaves yet, quite, but there are a few. And not having a football game to go to when the weather gets a little crisp and you start to put on the sweaters and the flannels and
where am I going to wear my vests? Where am I going to wear my vests this year?
Not having the football season to go to really hit home this weekend. And it really, like you said, it stinks. Yeah. It stinks. And, a lot of coaches and players, we saw a lot of them out there expressing their opinions about how it feels like, and a lot of coaches feel like football got singled out. They want to know why. They want to know how 30-something other states are playing football this fall. They want to see where exactly they're willing to do what they wanted to do, what they needed to do to stay as safe as possible. But, on the other side of it, you can see this thing's flaring up again as schools are getting back into it, and Connecticut's numbers are going back up.
Schools are closing. I mean, schools are being shut down for days at a time, weeks at a time. The numbers should scare you. Like, not trying to be like this fear monger and like everyone should be scared and never leave their house. But like the numbers, when they go up, that should be like a red flag. Like it should be something that is scary. And I mean, I know like when I read that, I think it was like a middle school in Trumbull that closed because they had like a lot of potential cases. And it's like, that's scary. Right. And at the end of the day, and I feel like it gets lost sometimes, is that they're student athletes. And like, I don't want to be that, old man yelling at his, off his porch, get off my lawn, but they're student athletes. And the student part is the most important part. Yeah. And if they can't get into the classroom, then sports don't mean anything. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I feel like that kind of got lost in all of this.
But yeah, that did. Here's my thing. I think that I don't think if football can't go, I don't know how you play soccer. And I know we've had doctors talk about that, and they say, well, it's a little more spread out and a little but there is some contact there. If you're going to be really hard line on, we don't want this to spread at all, which the DPH has been, then why play anything that's anything remotely contact? We saw North Branford had a case on their field hockey team. That's, a bunch of kids got quarantined. We saw New Canaan, 55 kids are now in quarantine there. I mean, you got to be as strict as possible with this. And that's not a football thing either. That was a YMCA thing from what I understand. It's just the contact there. And yes, kids do not get affected by this as much as older people like myself and others. They don't get as affected, but at the same time, the EPH has been pretty consistent and they don't want it to spread, except to the point where I'm like, well, why were the other sports are going to go? Either go or not. This football thing was that's the thing that hurts the most. Like, why football over the other ones?
There is a difference between football and soccer, I think.
Yeah. There is.
Obviously, the NFHS, when they came out with their high risk, moderate risk, low risk, like football was a high risk, soccer was a moderate risk, I believe. So, like, there is a difference there. That said, there is contact in soccer. There's a lot more contact in soccer than I think people think about and really imagine. Like, you go and watch a soccer game and you're like, it's really intense. It's very banging bodies. There's not a lot of equipment, gear, when they're like going up for headers and stuff and, corner kicks and stuff. But there is a difference than having, 5 linemen, lined up inches away from each other. There is a difference. Yes, that is only for a short amount of time, but I think there is a difference in that than in soccer. Like, you could play a soccer game and we've seen teams, score one early and then play keep away for the rest of the game.
Right.
And like, so I get that there are differences. I think if they're going to take a shot with a sport to play, to take a chance, I think soccer is that sport. I don't think they were willing to take a chance with football.
No, I understand
because
that.
of the higher risk, and we talked about this last time, and it's not about the fatality rate for kids who are in high school is very low. It is very low. That's what the science tells us. I'm not one to I'm not one to say science is wrong. You're out of your mind if you don't believe science. And that said, it is not really, it is about the kids, but at the same time, it's about mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, your aunts and uncles, your cousins. You hang out with a cousin, you live in Greenwich, you hang out with your cousin who's from Fairfield. All of a sudden that spreads. And then you don't really know, how far it can spread and who it can get. And, the biggest thing for me during this was my biggest fear was always getting it. Not because I don't think that someone my age could handle it. I'm in that, I think 30 range, whatever, 21 to 30, whatever it is. so like it's good for, it's better for people my age, but like, what if I gave it to my dad? What if I gave it to my mom? Like my dad's 60.
I think a lot of people listen. One death is too many, and then
One
now
death is way too many.
we've gone over 200,000 here in the country, and Connecticut's cases are going up. There's not as many deaths as there were. We will see. But here's the other thing though. Cases, because kids are going to that school, I'm pretty sure that has a lot to do with this. But all these states that are playing full sports right now, they've already started this season. They have been skyrocketing cases. Utah, who was director we had on last week, Utah's gone up 100%. And one of their top football schools, Corner Canyon, has basically shut down, and a teacher is in ICU. You also have North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Nebraska, Tennessee, high, not spiking as much, but high. Iowa dipped, going back up again. Texas slightly trending up. So, is this a football sports correlation? I don't think it's specifically related to those, but it's interesting to see how when we go back to school, these numbers start to go up. In September, it's getting colder out and all that stuff. And now the numbers are starting to go back up. I think the idea here is why exacerbate it by playing high risk sports like football. So, I get that, and I understand that. But what Glenn Lungarini was warning throughout this thing, Glenn Lungarini, the CIAC executive director, is without some sort of structure in place, like a football season, what were they going to do and what was going to happen? A lot of these other sports would probably go out to play AAU. Now we're hearing rumblings of a football club sport, not even a club sport, a privatized, some sort of football league. We know the Fairfield County guys are talking about it. And speaking of which, we will have on the great Lou Marinelli to give us a little insight into what's going on in Fairfield County. Now we know
very candid interview.
Yeah, great interview with him. We're trying to keep it a little light with him. We started off with the tough stuff, but we got into some of the light stuff. He's got a lot of guys who are actually playing now. Drew Pine being one of them at Notre Dame. Zach Allen with the Arizona Cardinals, and so on. They've had a great run. But Lou can give us a little bit of insight into what the plan is there. We've heard of others schools looking at, but by and large, I don't think you're going to see this big league spring up. I mean, we're talking, and you put out a great list of just the equipment and how much that is going to cost. And how much was it, Pete?
Range was between 18 to like 40,000.
Right, for to outfit a team.
50, and those were some low numbers that I was given, low prices. Obviously, teams and programs, athletic departments. There are multiple companies that do sell equipment in bulk like that. So I was, told that it's pricier. So,
right. So you have that.
GoFundMe's pop up. We've been seeing GoFundMe's pop up all over the internet asking for a lot of money. Yeah, and asking people to donate to give
$300,000. You need to get space for fields. A lot of coaches are kind of frustrated. They don't know where they're going to be playing or practicing. That's another hurdle. A lot of school districts might not even have the stomach to even deal with that. Lou Marinelli later on will talk about how they try and make it a club so it was still under the school auspices. But in that case, you can't do it because DPH says no. We don't want to play football. But that includes clubs. So that's a problem. But then you also have the problem of, right now New Canaan's dealing with 55 people kids in quarantine. And now I'm looking down here and seeing the news just pop over that the University of Notre Dame is a game versus Wake Forest has been postponed because of COVID cases on the team. New Canaan probably wouldn't be playing this week.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Honest.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, what my point is, there's a lot of it's just this time. There's no easy answers. This time is just absolute. It's brutal, and it's up to everybody's risk where they want their risk to be. The DPH has basically said we don't want to exacerbate it at all. We're going to try and get kids back to school because let's face it, kids need to be back in school. They need to have some sort of structure there, and just to deal with all these sports is tough, especially one like football. But why? I mean, why even play the other sports too? I mean, it's just.
Yeah,
there's so many things. There's the mental aspect. There's let's keep kids involved because otherwise they're going to run off and do whatever the heck they want, and you don't know what they're doing, give or take. So again, it's just it's a crazy time, Pete.
It's crazy, and I hope. I think I said this to Joe Morelli yesterday, our soccer writer. one of our soccer writers, and I was like, I hope we have a fall season for what we have. Like, I hope we have something, because it's some sort of normalcy, right? And you get, like, go to a soccer game or go to a cross country meet, to cover. And it brings that just sense of normalcy writing about high school sports for us. I'm talking about us. And I hope we have that, because I think the winter is going to be another huge hurdle to have the winter sports. I don't want to jump ahead, but I don't have confidence in having a winter season. And
I don't know.
Sucks. And it sucks.
I've seen,
but if nothing changes, there's no way we'll be able to continue with winter sports. And then we get to the spring and, you fingers crossed for school staying open.
Yeah.
Because I think spring sports have the best chance to play. Baseball, softball, golf, tennis. I think those have really good chances of playing, track. But if the schools don't stay open, then the sports aren't going to happen. And I think, again, high school sports coincide with the schools. And I think sometimes, again, that gets lost between a lot of people, thinking that, sports are this overarching, entity, and they're not. They're connected to the schools. And if the schools don't stay open, if we don't do our jobs in the fall and the winter to remain safe and keep the schools open, then don't even think about having a spring season if the schools aren't going to stay open.
Yeah,
and that's a season that I think right now could happen. I think you could have spring sports right now. I've talked to multiple people. I actually talked to an assistant baseball coach that I know, and he asked me last week. He's like, I was really hoping that they'd move baseball to the fall. And I said, in theory, yeah, you're coming off a summer of playing. There's really no warm-up period because you're going from summer to fall. But at the same time, the spring sports already lost the season. I don't think the CIAC wanted to risk starting spring and then having to cut it and be like, sorry, you guys are screwed again.
Yeah, I know that was a big deal that they didn't want to do, and Lou Marinelli gets into that a little bit with us down the road. But again, here's the main thing with me is I know everyone wants to get back to normal. Everyone wants everything to just, and in some ways it feels like everything is sort of getting back to normal. We're just not going to have a football season, and you can get a wild bunch of opinions on what people's stomach are.
Just check our Twitter notifications.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people who are most upset about this are the ones who are the loudest. I don't think you hear a lot of people who don't want it saying anything. I mean, there's plenty of people who don't want it either.
Yeah.
But I keep going back to the other sports, like what cross country, okay, but field hockey, soccer. If you're going to do football, you might as well do those. I don't even understand. I still don't understand swimming. Like, I don't know. You're indoors. I don't understand that. But again, some doctors think that's fine.
Chlorine, right? That's what people say. I don't know.
I guess.
But I was at Guilford on Monday for girls soccer practice with Joe, and I took like a nice wide shot photo. Soccer teams practicing, the cross country teams running on the track. I think boys soccer was up on the top. Field hockey was up on the top field. I don't know where boys soccer was. They might have been coming on after. But I was like, fall sports in full swing at Guilford. And literally put my phone in my pocket. 2 seconds later, my phone just starts ringing. And it's just, no football. Come on, Pete. There's no football. There's no football. I'm like, okay, guy. Like, is everything that we're going to do in the fall going to be brought all the way back to football?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to cover hand Guilford boys soccer. And Hand's going to win or Guilford's going to win. And then the first comment on the story is going to be like, we don't have football, so this season doesn't count. Like,
all right. So what we have coming up is we have the ECC has already announced an 7-on-7 passing league in conjunction with the lineman challenge. The CCC is about to put that out as well. I think the DPH and the state would rather the school districts just stick with that kind of stuff, the low risk 7-on-7s, and then keep the linemen involved. I know it's not the same. I know it stinks. I feel for a lot of these kids. I mean, and then about these private leagues. I mean, the numbers to me, Pete, just seem so exorbitant. And,
it's expensive.
And then you got to deal with insurance, which I've been told isn't isn't that bad per person. But then getting the equipment is expensive, and then getting the fields. If this goes off, I think it'll be very limited. It will be a very short, just a few teams, that handful of teams that can do it. It's not going to be like this wholesale league where we have it like normal. It's just not going to be it. Football is effectively done in Connecticut, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see them pulling this together.
Look, I'm going to be honest.
I don't know.
I like the EC. I don't think it's going to be able to pull together. I hope I'm wrong. I've been saying this all the time. I hope I'm wrong about everything. I really do.
I hate no football. This stinks.
Yeah, this is awful. But I like the ECC's, what they're going to do. Again, we talked to Lou about it. I asked him about 7-on-7, and he told me I didn't like linemen, which is not true. But, I get it. It's a good point. But it's something. The whole time we've been reporting on whether football is going to be played or not, whether they're going to play 11-on-11, all this stuff, the ups, the downs, the roller coaster ride that it was that coaches kept saying they just wanted something. Give us something. Well, 7-on-7 is something. And I know it's not football. I know that your linemen aren't going to be able to play 7-on-7, and that's why they have the lineman challenges. And yes, it is not the same. It's not, right? But at the end of the day, they talk about wanting to be together and having kids together and keeping the team together because they'll have something to look forward to. Well, 7-on-7 and lineman challenges do that. We can't just start picking and choosing what we deem what we want. You said you wanted something. They're going to give you something. I'm not saying you have to take it with a big smile on your face, but it is something. It's keeping the kids together, right? The coach just said, well, if we don't have football, maybe the kids aren't going to go to school. Well, if they have 7-on-7 or lineman challenges that they have to perform in or prepare to play in, well, then they're going to go to school because then they can't perform in those. They can't, play in those. So isn't that what it's about? Yes, 11-on-11 football is so much fun, and we love it, and we all enjoy it so much. But if we get down to facts, that is something to do. It's something that these kids get to do and play and look forward to after school, and they get to be together. And if you want to start getting into the technical stuff, well, they're not going to have tape to send to colleges. That's fine. That's a different conversation. But the conversation at the beginning was having something for them to do. And this is something. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's wrong. And that's something that I don't understand is that they keep saying, we want something. Well, here is something. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not something, but it keeps the kids together. It keeps the team together. They get to still be around their coaches who, for a lot of these kids, are mentors and people they look up to, and you can still make a difference in someone's life, even if it's just coaching 7-on-7 football. I'm not calling anybody out, or I'm not trying to make a big deal of it, but the kids are still together. And
listen, if I was them, I would fight for football tooth and nail too. So, I just because you are told you can't do it, it doesn't mean you don't give up the fight. I totally get that. So,
I get it.
And
rally, and if they want to get these private leagues off the ground, that's fine. But we can't just say we're going to make a private league. We have to look how much is insurance going to cost. Do we have fields? We don't have equipment. At one point or another, people need to start looking at the facts, and the facts show that it's going to be very hard to do / probably not going to happen. Again, hope I'm wrong. I would love if New Canaan gets their private league up and running and they get to play Fairfield or Fairfield Prep or St. Joe's.
I think you have to look at this on a case-by-case basis. If some kids get to play, within some sort of structure, then, more power to them. I think for the most of the state, though, it's false hope, and I still think that there's a chance to go to spring. But even, as we've talked with Lou about, we really don't know, if that's a good idea either, or where we're going to be by then. It's just, this whole thing just stinks all along.
It just stinks.
It just does. And
it absolutely stinks, because what has happened in the last couple of months has been coaches and media members and stuff is just turned into this one. You're either on side of playing or you're on the side of not playing, right? And it's just everyone going at it, and that's not what the football is normally, right? If we're normally playing football, everyone, there, people mad online anyway during the football season, but there's just so much more like camaraderie and like, we're back, we're playing football, I'm at a game, Sean's at a game, Ned's at a game, and there's just camaraderie, but it's just turned into this black versus white argument. You're either with us or you're against us.
Right. The fact that the idea that, listen, number one, this is the last thing I'm going to say before we get to Lou. Number one, the first thing I'm going to say, we're news reporters. We're not cheerleaders here. And we have nothing to do with a kid getting tested positive on Maloney and going to the rally. We have nothing to do with that. So anyone that's just us reporting the news. You want to get mad at us about that, you guys got a serious problem. And everyone wants it's not positive. It's not positive. We're not here to do we try to do positive, and we're going to talk a little positive a little later, but unfortunately, we're not in it. If you don't want to see negative stuff, or you don't want to see any news about this, unfortunately, this is the reality we live in, and that's a thing. And that's unfortunately the reality you live in. And the sooner you come to grips with that, the better. And don't tell me it doesn't exist. And don't tell me I'm the guy. Game Time CT is the sole reason that football got shut down. That's ridiculous.
That's
again, we are news reporters.
Yeah,
and that is a news story. So
we're not here to pump up and say, this is great, this is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not our jobs. And there are people out there who do that. You want to put your faith in football, Scoop? Yeah. Fine by me. I'm sorry if you do that, because I feel bad for you. But if you want to put your faith in those kind of things and people telling you yes all the time, and then I don't know what to tell you, but that's right.
It's dishonest, and it's not reality. And that's a big problem. And I find that as a problem, not just with this, but just across the board in the country, or maybe even the world, where people they just want to hear the good news. They just filter out everything bad news, or they dismiss the bad news, and they just get the good news. And that's where they're coming from, a position of that. Like, you have to really listen. I think we're all big, that's a part of being an adult, is getting out there and understanding that, bad news is bad news, and regardless, but that's our job. Our job is to do news. Our job isn't to, sugarcoat everything. So anyway, with that,
because Lou was so much fun.
Lou is so much fun. Enough of that gloom and doom. I'm sick of it. I really hope that I'd love to see a football season. Let's bring on Lou Marinelli. Joining us on the show is, of course, the great Lou Marinelli of New Canaan High School. He's been there for about as long as I've been around, which is a really long time. He's the all-time winning coach in Connecticut high school football history. Although you talk to some people like, wait a second, didn't he coach at Yorktown, New York, or wherever he was? Yeah, but welcome, Coach. Some crazy times here. Thanks for joining us, giving a little time here, and braving the parkway and all the stuff you need to get home. I know it's kind of a crazy day at New Canaan. Some kids, but 55 kids getting quarantined today. Which kind of throws it just seems that this thing is just not going to go away. And and how have you guys, well, first of all, how you guys holding up over there? I know it's kind of crazy. I know Fairfield's been a hot spot. How does a guy like you, coach, kind of navigate through all this, and how you guys doing, I guess?
Well, we have 140 kids out for football, and New Canaan is a very special place. It has been since the day I walked in there in 1981, and there's something very special about the town, about the kids that we coach. It's just when you have kids that, especially my senior class, my heart is breaking for our seniors, because they're such a good class. They're so cohesive, and they're just they've been looking forward for this. And every year. Kids come up through the program. There's freshmen, there's sophomore football, then there's JV, and then there's varsity. And most of our kids, not the Zach Allens of the world, or the La Polices, or those guys that jump up, but most kids come up through the ranks. So when you have the majority of your kids coming up through the ranks, and it's their turn that they've been waiting for, I'm going to try to do everything I can to get them a season, or whatever we can, because my heart just breaks for them.
Well, yeah, just talk about that a little bit. You guys are obviously at the forefront of trying to put some sort of club league, or at least a competition together, at least against each other, or what do we know on that? What's the latest? You had a meeting, I guess, yesterday or last night. Yeah,
now it's just a matter of trying to figure out who's in and who's out. But and it's expensive, and it's hard. It puts a lot of stress puts the stress on the coaches. And then, I think administration is trying to do what they can do to, obey the Department of Public Health. But we're all in a funny situation. It's really hard. And I don't like the idea of privatizing this because of so many unintended consequences, where it's going to turn into something like AAU. High school football is a very special thing, where the high school coach, the college coaches, and the high school coach is involved in so much, whether it be the recruiting or just helping in the college process, just where you want to go to school and be a student, or getting jobs and things like that. If all of a sudden some of the unintended consequences where, okay, we're going to go private, and Lou Marinelli, he'll be our coach because he's been around forever. Then all of a sudden, you lose a few games, and Lou Marinelli's getting old. We got to get rid of him, and let's get some young guy in there. So some young guy comes in and says, I want to be the best, to have the best program in Connecticut. So let's go talk to the kids at Stanford or some of the inner city schools whose programs aren't possibly what New Canaan is, and we'll talk them into coming and playing for us, and the whole thing gets blown up. Those are unintended consequences and things that I would hate to see, because I think high school football all over the country really is very special. And for us to privatize, and there are a lot of guys that want to make money, and certainly our league is not one that is looking to make any money at all. We're just trying to give our kids a season and get them on film, and those that want to use it for college, fine. But there are those guys that they see the opportunity to make a buck, so they'll seize it, and I think that will ruin high school football as we know it. So I would hate to have that happen on my watch.
Well, yeah, Pete put together a nice little graphic and kind of showed us what the cost of the equipment is, and what was the final? What'd you have, Pete?
According to the numbers that I received, it was between high end and low end. It was somewhere between like $18,000 and like $38,000 for a team of 50. Obviously, depending on your vendor or who you get your wholesale items for, it could be more expensive, it could be less. That was kind of the range that I was given.
The thing that's sad is that the people up in Hartford have decided to dig their heels in and not allow it, because it could be done if the schools were to sponsor the football as a club and allow us to use the uniforms and everything else in the fields and make it easy. But, it's just another hurdle that we have to cross, and it seems like every day there's a new hurdle. But, they've chosen not to do that. So, we're going to have to do whatever we can. And, like I said, New Canaan is a special place, and you have parents working like crazy, not only to raise funds for kids that can't afford it, but to raise funds for other schools, the schools in Stanford, the schools in Norwalk, the schools in Bridgeport, if they want. So I hope we're able to work something out, and I hope we're able to not to piss off the administration too badly.
I think you bring up a good point with other sports have other outlets, right? If there's no hockey season, there are 1,000 youth and men's leagues that the kids can play in just to play. Baseball, basketball is kind of the same. But there's, you finish high school, maybe you could play a little semi-pro in a couple of leagues in the state, but that's it, right? I mean, once your high school career is over, if you're not playing in college, that's really it.
Yeah, you could play intramural flag or touch or.
I was an intramural flag superstar, actually.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Were you all league? Were you all league where you played?
I was not. I was like, the nickel corner. I did go up against Joey DeVellis, head coach of West Hill, in college, and it got real physical in flag football. Ask Joey about that one time.
I will.
I may have gotten mad and thrown the football at him. But, I mean, that's, a lot of coaches say, that's not the same. And I understand that. But there is no tackle. I play softball now. But, there is no alternative for football, it seems like.
But yet in Connecticut, football is probably the most legislated sport there is, where all these other schools or all these other sports have the opportunity to play. And, we do, most of the schools do 7-on-7s in the off season and stuff like that, but that's not football, as you're saying.
But is it something though? Like, I feel like just a lot of the responses we've gotten on stories or talking to coaches and, all the crazies on Twitter are like, oh, you got to give the kids something, when they were going to just get rid of 11-on-11. They're like, you have to give them something. And then they're like, okay, 7-on-7. It's like, no, that's not something we want. But it's like, well, it's still something, right? You wanted something. They're offering you something, but now you don't like it. Like, that's kind of something that I just have a hard time with when they're like, we need to do something for the kids. And it's like, okay, 7-on-7. It's not what you want, but it is something. It's something to keep the kids together, right?
What do you have against fat kids? That's what I want to know.
Oh, I love line. Hey, I go to the Berlin lineman challenge. That photo Sean used on our story on the ECC, that was my photo. I love the lineman challenge, and I understand how important they are.
Right.
To the game of football, obviously, but isn't it better than not being together, not being organized, not keeping the kids together?
Well, again, you've separated the skill and the linemen, so it's really not it's not that team experience that you really want. I mean, you can try to duplicate that, but there's no better way to do it than with tackle football. With the team where all 11 people have a job, and you have to do that every play, and it builds such relationships among the kids, among the coaches. It's hard to do that in 7-on-7, and it's hard to do that when you're having a tug of war with the linemen. The whole thing is just it's very sad. That's why we're going to try to do whatever we can to get our kids some kind of season. And I don't want to get the administration, anybody upset, but I think it's our duty to do what we can for our seniors.
What are the hurdles? I mean, we talked about equipment, but we're also talking about fields, right? We're talking about insurance, talking about who's in and who's out. With all that, tell us a little bit about the hurdles, but then conservatively, what's the latest we could probably pull something together, and what would it look like?
Okay. First of all, the biggest hurdle, I think, is to make sure that whatever we do, that we abide by the protocols for COVID. We got to make sure. And one of the things that we're trying to get done is testing the kids every week, so that we're on top of this, and anybody that is positive, obviously, won't be able to play. But that's the number one thing. Then, the school, if they're not going to help, then you got to worry about equipment. And if it falls, now we're fortunate in that our youth program has a ton of equipment that they've been using for years. And actually, if we need a helmet or shoulder pads, or they need something, for years we've always gone back and forth. So I think we've built up an inventory where there is enough, not for everybody, for sure. So, we're going to have to buy, as an organization, as the New Canaan Youth Football League, we're going to have to buy some helmets and some shoulder pads, and the kids are going to have to buy girdles, but they mostly have those anyway. So that's a hurdle that we have to overcome. Of course, we want the kids to be all insured. We want the coaches to be insured. To make sure that, if something does go awry, that we're at least covered. And then you have the practice fields. Now, if towns are trying to stop this, then they're going to, charge exorbitant amounts to let us practice on the fields and for games. However, if it were a club sport, then everything would remain the same. It's just you cut out the CIAC. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they've been told not to have that happen like that. But and it's too bad. There's a lot of kids in the state that are missing out. And honestly, the kids in New Canaan, Darien, Greenwich, Westport, Fairfield, if they don't have football, they'll miss out on a great experience, a lifetime experience. where they'll make relationships with those guys for the rest of their lives. They grew up with them, playing football with them all through. But if if you don't do it, that's just an experience that's lost. So I don't know. I just think you got to really try. And then the other problem I have is that now, which I hate, and how we ever got to the commercialization of high school sports, and I don't want to get into that. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for some guy that grabbed me by my hair when I was a young kid and straightened me out, I don't know where I would be. So I mean, I've been coaching because I want to be able to do stuff like that for kids that may not have somebody to tell them that. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. But now I'm in a situation where if parents have to pay, I think it's $550 for their kids to play. So you've paid your $550, but you hardly got in. So now
Right.
now it becomes on me. And so are we trying to win, or are we trying to get everybody in? And I don't know the answer to that right now. It depends on how the league goes. So there's so many things, and I wish I could give you prices, but it's expensive. But if an organization is doing it, making the purchases, and you don't put that burden on the family. And one thing that I will say that I'm proud of, since I've been at New Canaan, no kid that ever wanted to go to a camp, no kid that ever needed a protective equipment, a custom pad or anything like that. No kid that couldn't afford whatever it was we were doing ever had to go without. And that's the one thing that's special about New Canaan. And you talk about the alumni. I'm sure, I feel very confident if Sean Patrick Boley didn't have a helmet and couldn't afford it, that I would call up one of the alums and say, hey, look, I have this kid. He's a really good player. He just can't afford it. And I'm sure that they would step up. They've done it before when we've taken kids to camp and everything else. So I mean, that's what I mean by New Canaan being a very special place.
Coach, time is
all
not
over
of
the place there.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But time is not of the essence here. I mean,
Okay.
time is of the essence. I mean, we don't have a lot of time. I
Right.
mean, it's, before we get into it, I mean, how much would you? I mean, let's just say you pulled it together in the next 2 weeks, which, I mean, you pulled something together, and it doesn't sound like it sounds like there's so much you got to get into. But then you got just a few weeks. But I mean, I see the way I look at it right now. If you guys were able to do it, I could only see you guys maybe playing a handful of games, maybe over like a couple of weekends in November or something like that. Maybe New Canaan, Darien, New Canaan, Greenwich, or Greenwich, Darien, or maybe even get some of the other schools involved. How much would you like instead for the CIAC to step in and say, like, we're going to commit to a spring and just maybe eliminate all this? Or I know there's a lot of hurdles there too, but
who's to say that in the spring it's going to be any better than it is right now?
right.
Yeah.
Number one. I think you create a lot of problems. So I'm thinking about, we have a lot of kids that are baseball players and lacrosse players. So now you get a junior that says, well, wait a minute. If I get hurt playing football and I don't play lacrosse, maybe I shouldn't play football. So I mean, it forces kids to, or how would you like to have a back-to-back season where you're playing football and then you jump right into lacrosse? They call it highly, what do they put it? A high-risk sport? Yeah. So 2 high-risk sport back-to-back, then to only turn around and, start all over in August again. It's tough. It's a tough situation. Plus, then we'll be at odds with the spring coaches and I'm very fortunate. We have a good relationship among the coaches in New Canaan, but I know that there's going to be guys going, trying to get kids. Hey, listen, I'm telling you, you can get a scholarship over here if you just concentrate on this one sport and forget about that for now. It's really not football season. You can go play again next fall. So I mean, there's a lot of problems with that. Plus, Sean, you and I are going to be skiing February 1st. We don't want to be. I don't want to be out there on the
You're right.
freezing in the snow. The snow's coming down. We want to get our skis on.
Yeah. But do you feel like, I mean, I know a lot of coaches have their own opinions about it, but do you feel like the no came down? I mean, I know we went back and forth, but do you feel, you look at other states, there are a lot of other states, there are states that are reversing it. Minnesota just did it the other day.
Yes.
Colorado gave them the
Delaware.
option.
Yeah.
Delaware reversed, Michigan. And we are seeing just if you look at the numbers, and not that this has anything to do with football, but the numbers are spiking as kids are going back to school across the country. But those states seem to be making it work. Do you feel like, for a state like us, we didn't really have a really high, we pretty much tamped it down for the most part. Now, granted, it's very contagious, but, was there a way that you think the CIAC or the Department of Health really should have just been like, all right, we can at least maybe try and do something like this and see where we went, and maybe do you feel like they really were too adamant? I mean, it sounds like you do.
Well, I mean, if they were to sit down in late June and July and came and all the parties came together, but that's not what happened. If it was no from the very beginning, like who's the guy that wrote the article about no means no? Well, no means no, but then you have adults telling you yes, and there's a possibility, and kids are on the edge. Oh, one day we're going to play, next day we're not, next day we're going to play. I mean, I thought it was really an unfair article. I think
it was Mike tomorrow.
Yeah, but it was unfair because, okay, no is no, but you don't have the adults all on the same page as no.
Yeah.
They were all on the same page as no in March. And if that was the case and they came down from the very beginning, but I mean, we were always sitting on edge. And then finally, when it did say no, and the CIAC said, well, it's not us. And it's the Department of Public Health. Well, and then you look at other states that are doing it. And that's why you have, guys like myself and others that are saying, well, you know what, if you thought we could have, and it's the Department of Public Health that's saying no, when we have the lowest numbers in the country, it just doesn't seem right. And you talk to I have one kid that left school to go play in Georgia. He played his first game on Friday night. He actually sent me the film of it. He's doing great.
Wow.
He actually was in 3 days of pads and played the game.
Wow.
So I mean,
how about the youth element too? How they're allowing? I mean, I know those are private enterprises, but they're allowing youth. I know they have the jurisdiction over the school, the CIAC, whether they can sponsor it or not. But then you look at the youth organizations. Not all of them are playing. I mean, it has been some issues, but you see that as well. That must be just infuriating.
How do you think my seniors feel when they're actually helping coach some of the youth teams and they're going on their fourth week already of games? And there hasn't been, knock on wood, there hasn't been any problem COVID-wise, at least that I know of. But and it's such mixed messages. Nobody, honestly, I don't know any coach that would want to have a player or any teacher would want to have any of their students have come down with COVID. Absolutely not. However, I will say that the age, from ages 15 to 24, your chances of dying of COVID, as I understand it, I could be wrong, are 0.00071.
It's low for kids.
Yeah.
It's low for kids.
Me and my coaches are more at risk than anybody else.
And I think that's what the DPH has been trying to say. And they've been trying to say they don't want to see any spread, period. I mean, and we are seeing cases, again, New Canaan, 55 quarantine, doesn't mean they all have it. They were just in the, vicinity. Like, you guys could have been shut down this week if that was the case. You know what I mean? If you guys were playing this week, they could have been like, Lou, you're out. But anyway, go ahead.
But wait a minute, but Sean, then if that's the case and they really felt that way, why didn't they shut schools down? Of course there's going to be a spike when schools go back. You got all those kids. And is it better to have those kids with me at practice for 2.5, 3 hours after school, or are we going to let them just wander wherever they go? I
understand that.
That's
a fair point. It's a fair point. I think that's the CIAC was trying to argue that they would prefer, listen, the kids are going to go do what they want. I mean, we've seen that. I think Joe Del Vecchia brought that up. Kids are going to do what they're going to do. You don't have them in a structured. I think the CIAC was arguing for a structured environment that you guys can provide, and without that, it was kind of like, well, you're kind of inviting trouble to begin with, and you're going to get more out. I mean, you could argue that. I have no problem with you arguing it.
Right,
So.
and that's where they came up, I think, with the 7-on-7 and lineman's challenge, just to keep those kids involved. But honestly, you know, if a kid is aspiring to be a college football player, those coaches don't want to see 7-on-7 film, and they could care less who wins the tug of war. But
right,
you know, they want to see kids, you know, actually playing the game.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Sorry. You brought up that your athletes are coaching youth football.
Yep.
One of our colleagues, Scott Erickson.
Nobody likes him. Nobody likes
Scott. He texted me that his son Sammy's playing.
He's on the 3rd grade team. And I promise you this, that 3rd grade team will be the state champions this year. They'll be the state champions of the 3rd grade this year.
Well, I wanted, because I was told that you were at one of the games, so I wanted a quick scouting report of Sammy Erickson. I mean, I know he's
not only him, but Charlie Silvestri's on that team too.
Yes, I heard.
Oh, wow.
Head coach.
And I'm telling you, and the reason that they're going to be state champions, I think it's the only 3rd grade team in the state. That's how I know they're going to be state champions.
Let's go ahead.
I would love to have them. I've been trying to do this for a few years now, but somehow I just couldn't get it off the ground. But I'd love to have them play at our halftime, you know, of a big game on youth night or something like that. Because, you know, you go up there and you watch these kids, and Chris Silvestri and, you know, Scott and all those guys that coach that 3rd grade team. It is hysterical. It is hysterical. And he makes every kid play every position. I mean, he does such a great job. They really do.
Apparently, Sammy's been a quote-unquote beast with tackles.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen it. Absolutely.
What's that? Lou, you gonna stick around for what? What class? The 2030 class? What is it? Or 31?
I gotta start working out and take my vitamins, man.
Speaking of guys, you know, you have had an unbelievable run lately. Of you've got Zach Allen
two NFL
playing
players on one team.
2 NFL players. I mean,
right.
Lucas
Zach
isn't playing this
graduated
year.
a year. Yeah, Zach graduated a year ahead of Lucas, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
So
Lucas opted out.
Had Lucas, who was drafted, he's opted out of this season. Zach Allen, who had a sack week 1, and Mike Collins, who's a Power 5 quarterback on that team.
Right. That's
And
right.
that doesn't include, like, I'm pretty sure La Police was on that team. He played Ivy
Yes,
League.
he was. He played at Harvard, right? And you want to know something? All the kids you mentioned, as good of football players as they were, they're better kids. They're better people. They're better young men. I mean, they're driven. It's not just football that they set their sights on. I think Zach Allen and La Police obviously was smart. As far as Mike Collins goes, he started at Penn.
Yep.
So all those kids were really good students, and they're the kind of young men that you want your son to be, all of them. You know, Lucas as well. I mean, they were just driven and very determined. I don't think I had very much to do. I think they were going regardless, but
They're big boys. They're talented.
They certainly helped us. Yes, they did.
Well,
yes,
like when you had that team, because obviously in 15, you guys also made the run to win it all. But in 14, when you saw that team, you have Zach and you have Lucas on the lines, you have Collins, and did you look at them and you go, okay, well, he's going to play in the NFL. He's going to play in the NFL.
No, I mean, the only kid that, well, unfortunately, we had a.
You losing?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Jason Cooper played for. He was on the practice squad for the Miami Dolphins and the Dallas, Texas.
Houston Texans.
Not the Houstons, but Dallas Cowboys. Right. For 2 years. Then I had a kid, Matt Kelly, who was with he's actually lives in town. His son's actually playing for us now. He played for the Giants for a little while, got cut, but then played for Barcelona. And I can remember going down to Giant stadiums when Barcelona came in for that World League. That was good.
Oh, yeah.
I did have a kid at Yorktown that played as well. But I mean, you never think about it. It's so hard to get to the NFL, and the percentages are so great. You never think about that. But you knew they were good students, and if it didn't work out, NFL or even college football, you knew they were going to do well as young men and going out and getting jobs and being successful, and those guys will be.
And that doesn't even include Kirk Caselli, who's still playing in the major leagues.
Right, Kirk Caselli, and don't forget Max Pacioretty. He never played football, but I mean, how about New Canaan has two guys in the NFL. They have a guy playing for Cincinnati and Major League Baseball who was a tremendous football player, by the way, all-state quarterback, and he could have punted for Vanderbilt, had he wanted to pursue that or his coach let him. But I mean, a small town in New England and have two guys in the NFL, and a Major League catcher and an NHL hockey player. It's
an NHL hockey player, he was captain of the Montreal Canadiens, which is an amazing honor in the NHL. On top of, he has the best quote in New Canaan yearbook history. I heard, or I actually saw a photo of it, his freshman year. He was on varsity hockey, and they asked him, what's the best part about being on the varsity hockey team? And he said, going to all the varsity senior parties, which I thought was awesome.
I'm sure there was just cookies and milk there because the hockey team is they're very good. Plus, Bo Hickey would have killed them, but that's a whole different story.
But it is really crazy when you just look at it. And I think I was talking to Terry Denine about this last year when Zach was in the NFL, and he's like, how many towns have an NHL player, an MLB player, and an NFL player?
In Connecticut.
And
Connecticut, yeah.
Or anywhere.
That's amazing.
Right.
It is amazing.
And, I had a chance to go to dinner about a month ago with a lot of guys from the 1982 championship, and they still are together. And you want to talk about the value of football, with high school kids and those guys, just to listen to them talk about their experiences. What is it, 40 years later? I mean, it's good to know that some of the seeds you sowed are developing and have developed, and when you see how successful they are, when you see how they are still involved in the program, they want to give back. I mean, it's an unbelievable experience for me.
Well, I'll tell you,
we didn't even talk about
Turkey Bowl. Sorry, quickly. I went to the Turkey Bowl last year for the first time, and La Police was there. Collins is warming up with Drew, which I know Sean's going to touch on a little bit. It was really nice to see all those kids from only a couple of years ago coming back on Thanksgiving and just hanging out. I thought that was so cool.
Once a Ram, always a Ram. And we've said that from day one. And how many kids? They don't all keep in touch, but a lot of them do. And it just, when you've been there as long as I have, it's like, wow. Just it's amazing, really.
We didn't even talk about Drew, Coach Drew Pine, who threw. All I know is
who was that?
Yeah,
Drew Pine.
He was this quarterback that you had. That he made some headlines back in his day.
Yeah, I was away, and all of a sudden I saw my Twitter, my notifications. I guess Alex Lapolice yelling at me and Pete and Jeff Jacobs about.
I was watching the game.
I was wait a minute. Well, hold on. He threw his pat. He got into the game, and I think Alex was killing us. I don't remember killing Drew. I love Drew. I thought Drew was a great quarterback, but I'm apparently I'm a naysayer.
I was watching the game. I grew up a Notre Dame fan. My dad's uncle went to Notre Dame, so I grew up watching Notre Dame. I remember when Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator, was the quarterback, and going back to Cardell Holiday and the beginning of Brady Quinn. So I got the game on. I'm just working on something. I'm not really paying attention. They're up 45-0. And all of a sudden I hear, because it wasn't Tirico, because Tirico was doing the U.S. Open, the guy who was doing the announcer goes, and New Canaan, Connecticut. And I just kind of turned over to my TV and I was like, holy crap. I was like, Drew's in the game. So then I took my phone out and I just started taking a million photos and videos to try and get something. But I mean, that had to be wild. Not only to go there because it is Notre Dame, but to get in his second game. He was a backup quarterback. He didn't put him in because he was a freshman. He put him in because he was second on the depth chart in that game, which is wild.
Right.
You talked to him, Coach?
Yeah. Matter of fact, he texted me in the morning. He said, "Coach, I made the second team this week. I hope I can get in." So I said, "Well, best of luck. I hope you do. Make us proud." And then he said, after the game, I said, congrats, great game. And he said, Coach, it was awesome. And then when I completed my first pass, he said, I just had goosebumps. It was unbelievable. And here's another one. He's a very smart kid. He probably could have went to an Ivy League school had he wanted to. He had offers all over the place. But he's a better kid than he is a football player, and he's a hell of a football player. But all those kids. I mean, I've been blessed. I've been really blessed with, the kids I've had play for me. I mean, it's been unbelievable. And, when we went down to TCU to watch Lucas and Mike play, my wife and I mean, I think I'm the proudest guy in the stadium. I mean, just to see them both playing and doing well, so it's amazing, really. And then, going up to watch Zach when he was at BC. Even last year, when I went to visit Johnny in Arizona, we got a chance to go to the Cardinals game where Zach was. So it was, it's great for me. Yeah, it is. It's a thrill.
That's your second Notre Dame player, and for the school, or is it your second or third? And for the school, they had Pete Demerly, who was the legend not just of New Canaan but Connecticut and Notre Dame. Right. So, but now he's joining that. I mean, to have all those guys going to Notre Dame, which is the cradle of college football, it's
right. We had a kid. It's actually the third kid we had. We had a kid walk on and make it for a while, and I don't know what happened, but I think he dropped out. But to go out there and to just walk the campus and to see, I mean, it's like such a storied school and such a storied program. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
And I completely forgot that one of them was Connor Hanratty, whose dad was Terry Hanratty. I mean, you guys are like dripping with. I mean, imagine Drew goes on and has this legendary career. You guys are just dripping with like Notre Dame lore, New Canaan. They must have put you on, underneath Lou Holt and Eric Parsegian and.
You got to put right near touchdown Jesus.
Yeah. Put the New Canaan ramp.
That place though, Coach. I'm sure you've been there. That's a strong assumption on my part that you've been to Notre Dame.
Yes.
That place, I went my senior year. So my guidance counselor was a huge Notre Dame fan too. I could never get into Notre Dame in any lifetime, and I told him I was going on an official visit to Notre Dame because me and my dad were going to go to a game, and he just looked at me and he's like, "Pete, you can't get into Notre Dame." He's like, I can't give you a excused absence to go to Notre Dame just for a game. And I was like, come on, like I never missed high school. I had one unexcused absence in 4 years of high school, courtesy of my mother. Like she never let me miss school except for the Giants parade in 2011 after they won the Super Bowl.
Oh wow!
And so I came to an agreement with him that I would buy him a shirt and a little bumper sticker that he could put in his office, so like it seemed like someone went to Notre Dame from him, as long as he gave me an unexcused absence, and he did. And then I got to go watch Jimmy Clausen win his first game as a quarterback in Notre Dame against Duke.
Nice.
It was wild. It is an amazing, amazing place. And I was actually going back and forth with Drew's brother, Brendan, on Saturday. And he was saying they were all excited, which was great. But I reminded him because in the winter, Drew was smack-talking me on Twitter because I posted a photo of a gingerbread house that I made. And I was with a couple of friends, and I was like, whose is the best? And I was like, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And he was like, well, number 1's the worst one. And I was like, Drew, what the hell, man? I covered you for 4 years. I thought we had something, And you tell me I got the worst gingerbread house? So I told him, I go, just because you're on national TV doesn't mean I'm not going to forget about this. Yeah, I'm still very hurt about it. But like you talk about them being good kids and stuff, and like what Lucas did last year at TCU when he played with the hip injury. To play, I think it was against Texas A&M.
No, it was against Texas. That was his last game.
Yeah, and he played.
He played, and then he was operated on that Tuesday, I think.
But he could have hurt himself even more, which would have hurt his NFL draft stock. But he decided to play because he wanted to play against Texas. He wanted to play for his teammates, and they won.
Yes. I think that was the last game they won, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure.
And that was that's just – he risked everything.
But he what shows you the bond that football players have. And the doctor told him, you really shouldn't play. He said, well, I got to play. We're playing Texas. I have to play. This will be my last game. I promise. I'll come. He said, okay, we're going to operate on Tuesday, but I just want you to know that, it's a risk. And he said, it's okay. I'll take the risk. I mean, things like that people don't understand. And but for his teammates, and to go down there where football is king, and a coach from Connecticut and his wife there just mingling with the players and the coaches and stuff. I just so proud. I mean, I can't explain it. It's just a great weekend when we went down there. We actually went down for 2 or 3. But I remember being at a Columbia Cornell game, and I think Cornell eventually won. But 2 of my players were like the top players on each team. Nico Gutierrez and Kurt Ondash. I mean, it's such a thrill to watch them, because you've seen them since they were like in the youth football league, and you watch them come up, and then they play for you, and you get a chance to get to know them a little bit better. And then when you see them there, and then they graduate, they go and they become very successful. It's just a tremendous thing.
Well, I think we have to touch on the Zach Allen photo that's over Sean's shoulder.
Oh yeah.
When he dunked on the goalpost.
Dunked on the
You've
goal.
been coaching for a very long time. That was obviously a 15-yard penalty. I think well worth it. But have you ever, and just to paint the picture for people, they were playing Greenwich. He drops back into coverage from the line, gets a pick six, homecoming, and just dunks on the goalpost. In your, 30, 40 plus years of coaching, have you ever seen something like that? Or was that kind of the first time that you were like, okay.
He has, and I was at that game. Tell him,
right.
Coach.
Kevin McCarry dunked it against Darien. I think he's actually coaching at Darien now.
Yes.
But it was a long run, and but he was very fast. By the time he crossed the goal line, I think I have a picture of that one in my office.
I have a video of that I probably will put over this.
There you
go.
Perfect.
But it was, what's funny? I think, correct me, I might be wrong, but I remember Jerry McDougal was at that game. Right before, right before he died. Right before, I think it might have been his last football game. I think he died in. Yeah, I think it might have been his last one, but I remember him going there. And but it was at the end of the game. You guys were beating him up pretty good, and then Kevin just dunked right. It was like unbelievable.
Right.
So that's 2 within 3 years.
Yeah, right. That was one. I think I told him. I said, "All right, if we're winning and you catch that, then you can do it." Never thinking that we would ever be in that situation. Then when he does it, I got it. Coach. All right, okay, you're right.
I remember everybody got mad at him for that. And they also got mad at the hammer that year.
The hammer.
The hammer had its own Twitter account.
Matter of fact, the hammer was impounded by the police. We couldn't get it back.
Yeah.
And then you had Dave Rudin was interviewing the hammer. I mean, that thing created such a stir. And we had created this tradition where the kid with the best hit got to carry the hammer out. It was like this, this badge of honor. But then I don't know.
Yeah, St. Joe didn't like that when you put it on their field.
Like so they've been beating us ever since, I think.
Yeah. Coach, go ahead, Pete.
That's just too funny. Just the Zach Allen one. I remember we threw it up on Twitter. Jimmy Graham gave him a shout out. And then there was the rumors leading into the NFL draft 2 years ago. Jimmy Graham was on Green Bay, and Zach was connected to Green Bay in all the mock drafts.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, they're going to be on the same team. And because Jimmy Graham was like, Zach Allen's my favorite high school football player in the country. Because Jimmy Graham used to dunk all the time in New Orleans, and they were so close to being teammates, and that would have been awesome.
Right, it would have been. I remember being when Zach was getting drafted. It was a little bit different this year because of COVID, but we were down in a restaurant in New Canaan, and the staff was there and everything. And then when it came up, everybody in the whole restaurant just started cheering and everything else. It was just a tremendous feeling. Tremendous.
We've kept you long enough. I'll try to end this conversation like 3 times.
Going,
I know. Coach, we really appreciate you coming on. And whatever comes of this league, I hope the kids at least somehow get on the field together, or at least.
Yeah, I hope so, too. I hope we don't get everybody upset, but we'll see what happens.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. As you mentioned, you lose something. I'm walking around fall, and I'm up, it's just not the same without a football game to go to. So you lose something. you could argue what's best for the kids, what's best for the community, what's best during this nutty times. And I think I've said this last time, this too shall pass, and we'll be looking back on it going, wow, how did we survive that?
Yeah.
So I think staying the course here, kind of accepting what comes with you and trying to find a way to fight through it. I think that's what football players are good at, and that's what you guys teach them. So I think that's good. But Coach, we really appreciate you having on here. And
it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys thinking of us. That's great.
All right.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
I'll see if I can work my way off of this now.
All right. Well, thanks, Coach. All right, Pete, that was Lou Marinelli. I told you guys it was going to get a little lighter toward the end of the.
Can we do a little behind the curtain before Lou jumped on?
Oh.
He was on his phone trying to talk to us, but the sound wouldn't work. He's so funny.
Oh, he talk about positive. He likes to brightens the room up.
He does.
Jokes.
And but he gives you sincere, honest answers. It was very candid. He tells it like he sees it, and that it's refreshing. Especially nowadays, it's refreshing when someone tells you like it is, and he understands. He seems to understand both sides. And what I really liked, what he talked about was, maybe New Canaan can pull this off. Maybe St. Joe's can pull this off. Maybe some really good towns and schools who are, well done financially can pull this off, but they're not forgetting about the people who can't. And I think
they're going to try. I'm skeptical. I like the try stuff. Another important thing I thought Lou brought up was he doesn't want this to be he doesn't want AAU football. And I don't think you can really do it. It's not like hockey is probably the most expensive, junior sport you can play, right? Am I maybe you'll no, hockey more than anything.
Hockey is very expensive.
Wise.
I just bought
rent renting rinks or getting rink time. No. That's important too. But football is just a whole nother level as far as all that's concerned. It's really hard to do.
It is, and it's definitely going to be. I hope they can get it off the ground. They seem to have the right people trying to direct this ship. So that's all you can do.
As long as their heart is in the right place, at least.
Yeah, their heart is in the right place, and that's nice to see. But I agree with him saying, no, he doesn't want. He wants, if it's going to happen, he wants it to be a one and done. He doesn't want AAU. Look, we could talk at lengths about, those AAU programs, not all of them, those summer baseball leagues and stuff like that, where it's just money trading hands. And, the kids are never at the forefront of that conversation. So if it gets done, I hope it gets done. And I hope it's a 1 year and we get back to competing for state championships next year.
Just a quick thing before we go. Our deepest sympathies and condolences go out to the Rocco family in Wilton. Son George DeRocco unexpectedly died, and he was a member of a football team, and that's we hate to see that. That's just awful, and I have nothing else really to say other than our deepest sympathies to all the guys in Wilton. We love you, and our hearts go out to you. So. So I guess that's going to be it for this week. We're going to try and do a lot more of these. We got a lot of stuff. We still got a lot of football stuff we're going to do. We're going to try and do over the next few days. I mean, not just with club leagues and all that stuff, but with stories about how this has impacted everybody and what comes next. So we hope you join us. Thanks for Lou Marinelli joining us on the show this week. And that's it. Pete, any other final notes?
Nothing. Just stay safe, and I love everybody.
Yeah. Okay, Pete. For Peter Bergaga, I'm Sean Patrick Bully. This has been the Meat Grinder and Game Time TV.